Chapter 19 of When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. When Anna went back to school, she found that she'd been moved up. Madame Socrates was still her teacher, but the work was suddenly much harder. This was because her class was preparing for an examination called the Certificat d'études, which everyone except Anna was taking the following summer. "I'm excused because I'm not French," Anna told Mamma, and anyway I couldn't possibly pass. But she had to do the work just the same. The girls in her class were expected to do at least an hour's homework each day after school, to learn whole pages of history and geography by heart, to write essays and study grammar, and Anna had to do it all in a language which she still didn't completely understand. Even arithmetic, which had been her great standby, now let her down. Instead of sums, which needed no translation, her class was doing problems, long, complicated tangles in which people dug ditches and passed each other in trains and filled tanks with water at one rate while siphoning it off at another. And all this she had to translate into German before she could even begin to think about it. As the weather became colder and the days darker, she began to feel very tired. She dragged her feet walking home from school and then just sat and stared at her homework instead of getting on with it. She suddenly felt quite discouraged. Madame Socrates, mindful of the coming exam, no longer had so much time for her, and her work seemed to be getting worse rather than better. No matter what she did, she could not reduce the mistakes in her dictation below 40. Lately, they'd even climbed it back again into the 50s. In class, even though she often knew the answers, it took her so long to translate them into French in her mind, it was usually too late to give them. She felt that she would never be able to catch up and was getting tired of trying. One day, when she was sitting over her homework, Mamma came into the room. "Have you nearly finished?" she asked. "Not quite," said Anna, and Mamma came and looked at her book. It was arithmetic homework, and all Anna had written was the date and problems at the top of the page. She'd drawn a little box shape round problems with a ruler, and had followed this with a wavy line in red ink. Then she decorated the wavy line with dots and surrounded it with a zigzag shape and more dots in blue. All this had taken her the best part of an hour. At the sight of it, Mamma exploded. "No wonder you can't do your homework," she shouted. "You put it off and put it off until you're too tired to make any sense of it. You'll never learn anything at this rate." This was so exactly what Anna felt herself that she burst into tears. "I do try," she sobbed, "but I just don't seem able to do it. It's too difficult. I try, and it isn't any use." And in another burst of weeping she dripped tears all over problems, so the paper cockled and the wavy line spread and got mixed up with the zigzag. "Of course you can do it," said Mamma, reaching for the book. "Look, if I help you." But Anna shouted "no" quite violently and pushed the book away so it shot off the table and onto the floor. "Well, you're obviously in no condition to do any homework today," said Mamma after a moment's silence, and walked out of the room. Anna was just wondering what she ought to do when Mamma came back again with her coat on. "I have to buy some cod for supper," she said. "You'd better come with me and get some fresh air." They walked down the street together without talking. It was cold and dark, and Anna trudged along beside Mamma with her hands in her pockets, feeling quite empty. She was no good. She'd never be able to speak French properly. She'd be like Greta, who'd never managed to learn. But unlike Greta, she couldn't go home to her own country. At this thought, she began to blink and sniff all over again, and Mamma had to grab her arm to stop her bumping into an old lady. The fish shop was some distance away in a brightly lit busy street. There was a cake shop next to it, its window filled with creamy delicacies which she could either take away or sit down to eat at one of the little tables inside. Anna and Max had often admired it, but neither had ever set foot inside it because it was so expensive. This time Anna was too miserable even to look at it, but Mamma stopped by the heavy glass door. "We'll go in here," she said to Anna's surprise, and steered her through. They were met by a wave of warm air and a delicious smell of pastries and chocolate. "I'll have a cup of tea and you can have a cake," said Mamma, "and then we'll have a talk." "Isn't it too expensive?" asked Anna in a small voice. "We can manage one cake," said Mamma, "but you'd better not pick one of those absolutely enormous ones, otherwise we might not have enough money left for the cod." Anna chose a pastry filled with sweet chestnut puree and whipped cream, and they sat down at one of the little tables. "Look," said Mamma as Anna sank her fork into the cake, "I know it's difficult for you at school, and I know you've tried, but what are we to do? We're living in France, and you have to learn French." "I get so tired," said Anna, "and I'm getting worse instead of better. Perhaps I'm just one of those people who can't learn languages." Mamma was up in arms at once. "Nonsense," she said. "There's no such thing at your age." Anna tried a bit of her pastry. It was delicious. "Would you like some?" she said. Mamma shook her head. "You've done very well so far," she said after a moment. "Everyone tells me your French accent is perfect, and you really know an awful lot considering that we've been here less than a year." "It's just that now I don't seem to be able to get any further," said Anna. "But you will," said Mamma. Anna looked down at her plate. "Look," said Mamma, "these things don't always happen as you expect. When I was studying music, I sometimes struggled with something for weeks without getting anywhere at all, and then suddenly, just when I felt it was quite hopeless, the whole thing became clear, and I couldn't think why I hadn't seen it before. Perhaps it'll be like that with your French." Anna said nothing. She didn't think it was very likely. Then Mamma seemed to come to a decision. "I tell you what we'll do," she said. "It's only 2 months till Christmas. Will you try just once more? Then if by Christmas you really feel you still can't manage, we'll do something about it. But I don't quite know what, because we have no money for school fees. But I promise you we'll think of something. All right?" "All right," said Anna. The cake really was remarkably good, and by the time she'd finished the last lick of chestnut puree, she felt a lot less like Greta than before. They stayed sitting at a little table for a while longer because it was such a pleasant place to be. "Nice to go out to tea with my daughter," said Mamma at last, and smiled. Anna smiled back. The bill came to more than they'd expected, and there was not enough money left for the cod after all, but Mamma bought mussels instead, and it didn't matter. In the morning she gave Anna a note to Madame Socrates to explain about the homework, and she must have put something else in it as well, for Madame Socrates told Anna not to worry about school, and also found time again to help her during the lunch break. After this, the work didn't seem quite so bad. Whenever it threatened to overwhelm her, Anna remembered that if she really found it impossible, she wouldn't have to go on trying forever, and then she usually discovered that she could manage after all. And then one day her whole world changed. It was a Monday morning, and Colette met Anna at the school gates. "What did you do on Sunday?" she called. Instead of mentally translating the question into German, deciding on an answer and then translating that back into French, Anna called back, "We went to see our friends." The words just seemed to arrive from nowhere in perfect French without her having to think at all. She was so astonished that she stood quite still and didn't even hear Colette's next question. "I said," shouted Colette, "did you take the cat out?" "No, it was too wet," said Anna, again in perfect French and without thinking. It was like a miracle. She couldn't believe that it would last. It was as though she'd suddenly found that she could fly, and she expected each moment to crash to the ground again. With her heart beating faster than usual, she went into the classroom, but her new talent persisted. In the first lesson, she answered 4 questions correctly, so that Madame Socrates looked at her in surprise and said, "Well done." She chatted and laughed with Colette in break, and during lunch she explained to Clotilde how Mamma cooked liver and onions. Once or twice she still hesitated, and of course she made mistakes, but most of the time she was able to speak French just as she spoke German, automatically and without thinking. By the end of the day she was almost light-headed with excitement, but not at all tired, and when she woke up the next morning she had a moment of utter terror. Suppose her new gift had vanished as suddenly as it had come. But she need not have worried. When she got to school she found that she was even more fluent than before. By the end of the week Mamma looked at her in amazement. "I've never seen such a change in anyone," she said. "A few days ago you looked green and miserable. Now it's as though you've grown 5 centimetres and you look quite pink. What's happened to you?" "I think I've learned to speak French," said Anna. End of chapter 19.